Ben Griffin is the runaway favorite to win this week's John Deere Classic, which is both a commendation for Ben Griffin playing some awesome golf right now, but also an indicator of what this field looks like for this week before the PGA Tour heads international beginning next week. We're going to break down our thoughts on Griffin, whether you can bet him at his current odds, other golfers we like for this week, and the top DFS picks for TPC Deere Run. Welcome on into the Heat Check, a FanDuel Research podcast. My name is JimSannes. I am a managing editor for FanDuel Research, joined here as I am every Tuesday by Brandon Gdula. You can find him on X at Gdula13. He is on Blue Sky at Gdula. Check out his work at FanDuel Research, where he is a senior managing editor. Brandon, John Deere Classic coming up this week. How you doing today?
I'm just glad to have you back. I'd never say it to your face, but I enjoy podcasting with you and doing the solo pods. They just don't feel the same. I'm definitely a tag team podcaster, and so I'm just glad to be in the sort of secondary position again. But it was worth it for you to go see the world. How was your trip?
It was good. Got to venture around the Kenai Peninsula in Alaska. Had a lot of fun. Saw a lot of whales. Saw a black bear scratching its back on a stone, as one does. A lot of otters. It was a good time. Happy to be out there. Very tired still coming back. But what could possibly rejuvenate a tired, weary traveler than the John Deere Classic? Of course, here in my home city of Illinois, kind of, barely. It's still technically there. Got the Chicago Street Race for NASCAR this week, too. So Illinois, the center of the sporting universe in the middle of July. What more could you possibly ask for? Today, we're going to break down the John Deere Classic from a betting and DFS perspective, letting you know our best bets at FanDuel Sportsbook and the top DFS plays on FanDuel as well. But first, a reminder to make sure you are subscribed to the FanDuel Research Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. While you're there, leave us a 5-star rating and review. Also, check out the video version of the show, both on Spotify, but of course also on the FanDuel Golf Betting YouTube page, FanDuel Golf Betting YouTube page for each and every heat check. So we break down our thoughts on the field for that week. A couple of big tournaments just around the corner. So hit subscribe and leave us a thumbs up on YouTube. We appreciate those of you watching there as always. FanDuel, because nothing says summer fun like adding excitement to the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. What if I'm getting sunburned at the beach instead, or in downtown Chicago at a street race? Also, you should wear sunscreen. Summer sports are calling your name. Baseball under the stadium lights or under the Bristol lights. They're playing baseball at Bristol next month. Golf on pristine green fairways. I can assume that is referring to TPC Deere Run. Soccer matches with world-class goals and all the action-packed moments in between. You are going to spend all day following favorite sports on your phone anyway. Might as well make it more thrilling with FanDuel. Open the app today and see the daily promotions. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today to get started. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas, in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in DC. Kentucky or Wyoming. First online real money wager only. First $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expires 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat Connecticut. Visit M&D Gambling Help Oregon, Maryland. Hope is here. Visit Gambling Helpline MA.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Let's take a look here at TPC Deere Run. It is 7,289 yards in a par 71. There are 156 golfers in the field for this week. The top 65 plus ties will make the cut after the first two rounds. So a lot of guys gonna miss the cut for this week, but also more importantly, we got to find golfers good enough to make the cut. That may be the way I'm going to view things this week, because there aren't a lot of golfers I am super into for this week. Let's dig in, though, Brandon, to TPC Deere Run. What should people know about this course before filling out bet slips or lineups for this week?
Yeah, so a little similar to last week in the sense of it's a pretty sort of standard course where there's not a huge emphasis on any particular stats, more so than what you typically get at your average PGA Tour setup. Now, the one stat that you're going to hear a lot about is driving accuracy this week, where this course favors more accurate drivers compared to longer hitters. And, I definitely hear that, but there's also only so much you can layer in driving accuracy before you're doing yourself a bit of a disservice, especially with how driving accuracy stats are compiled. We always talk about this, but it's kind of one of those weeks where, spoiler alert, one of my key stats is strokes gained off the tee with an emphasis on driving accuracy, not just driving accuracy by itself. But again, accuracy compared to distance, accuracy wins out. If you look at recent winners, you'll kind of see that. Davis Thompson, he's got some length off the tee. He won here last year, but other recent winners, Sepp Straka, JT Poston, Lucas Glover, Dylan Fratelli, Michael Kim, definitely not super long hitters, all of them. And I think similar to last week, there wasn't a lot of specific areas that we could key in on, at least that I tend to find in my research. I think also similarly, we're going to see scores go low. Last week, the leaderboard was very tight. Everyone seemed, I don't know if anybody even missed the cut. It seemed like everyone was within 2 shots of the lead on Sunday. But I don't know. I think we're going to get low scores because recent winning scores here have been extremely low. 28 under 1 last year. Before that, 21, 21, 19, and 21 under par. But with that, we don't always see a clustered leaderboard for various reasons. Winning shot margins dating back from last year have been 4 shots, 2, 3, 2, 2, 8. Shout out to Michael Kim back in 2018. And then Bryson DeChambeau won by 1 shot in 2017. So we don't always see a super concentrated top of the leaderboard. Someone kind of gets hot and runs away with it. But in terms of key stats, all right, let's really actually dig in. Give me something that we can take away. Proximity from 150 and in, so basically 50 to 150, or you can go to Data Golf. They have an approach skill tool, strokes gained per shot, whatever it is. But you're going to see kind of a bigger emphasis on shorter approaches. So wedge play is going to come in handy this week, given we got wide fairways. Despite that, being in the right spot, being in the fairway is important. These greens are a little bit smaller than average. So I feel like for courses like this, I say a lot to say not a lot at all. But realistically, what you need to do is hit fairways. So that's strokes gained off the tee with some accuracy. You got to hit greens. If winning scores are going to be 21 under in that range or lower, you got to hit greens and give yourself birdie putts. So strokes gained approach, still my number 1 stat. I'm looking for strokes gained putting, birdie or better rate. And then again, proximity or strokes gained per shot from those shorter distances. 150 and in, I think, is going to be the way that we determine a winner this week.
I want to go back to your discussion about off the tee play, because we talk about this a lot at majors, but this is an event again where I kind of just want overall off the tee play personally, despite the fact that accuracy has won out in the past, in large part because I just want the best overall golfers in a field where I'm struggling to find a lot of guys who stand out. So to me, let's say I'm looking at a golfer who may not be hyper accurate off the tee, but excels in other areas. I don't want to write that golfer off and go to someone maybe in the same tier, from a betting odds perspective, who is demonstrably worse elsewhere than that golfer, just because they do stand out there. If you look at Data Golf's numbers, distance does matter a bit still too. It's not like it's totally downplayed. So although you're about to go through course history, the guys who stand out most are a lot of guys who are not long off the tee by any means. I do still want to look at overall strokes gained off the tee, because I just want better quality golfers in a field where the overall strength is not amazing. So I guess that's kind of the way I'm doing things. It sounds like based on the way I know you tend to play things, but also based on the way you said emphasis on accuracy, not like selling out for accuracy, it sounds like we're kind of aligned there too.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting whenever you get into this subjective nature of betting and just analyzing golf and golf fields, you can kind of look at this and be like, all right, there's no Scotty Scheffler, there's no Rory Xander, typically there's been a couple more names, but I don't know if we can really throw like Colin Morikawa or in there or anything like that at this point. But you could look and say, okay, well, last week we saw Aldrich Potgieter go out and get a win. The leaderboard was kind of up for grabs for anybody. Now, what's interesting is that historically, in like recent years, while this has been somewhat open to winners, like I mentioned, those winners, and it's like, yeah, those aren't like, it's not like Scotty Scheffler's been winning here, but that's for a different reason. But basically, each of the last 5 winners have been one of the top 25 golfers in the field by OWGR rankings. So it's not that, you were a top 25 golfer in the OWGR, because I think we've got 2 of them this week. 2 exactly. Inside the top 20. I don't know how Sung J M's still there, but it's he and Ben Griffin. But basically, like, you're a top 20, top 25 golfer or better among this field, and you tend to win. And so I think that can kind of help simplify things to like expand a little bit, but I don't know that we're going to see a mega long shot win here. I could be way off base in that. It's a pretty birdie friendly setup, but along with that, there's not a dominant force, depending on how you feel about Ben Griffin, basically. While he stands out, he's also not gaining 3 shots on everybody. He's just better than everyone right now. So I'm kind of looking for, like you kind of put it, and the way that I'm, basically what I'm getting to here is I still think some of the better golfers are the better way to go about it. And without any mega favorites, you can get 2-3 names, 20 to 40-ish to 1 and feel really good this week. So that's where I'm leaning. Yeah. We'll talk about that more, but yeah, I'm with you there.
Okay, we'll dive into what that means from a betting perspective later on. First, so let's take a look at the golfers who have done well at TPC Deere Run in the past. As alluded to, not exactly a bunch of bombers on this list. Brandon, when you look at the data, who has stood out most at this course in recent trips?
Yeah, so I tend to look at the last 5 years of data and just do total strokes gained to get a feel for volume and success. I'm using the last 4 because this tournament was canceled in 2020 due to the pandemic. So I'm not digging back on a 6th year. I'm just doing the last 4 years. And when I do that, you see, like you said, some golfers who don't necessarily jump off the page as like super long hitters. But number 1 for me by this method is Lucas Glover. Glover, again, long history at TPC Deere Run, won in 2021. I believe he's played here 15 times in his career. 2 straight top 25 finishes the last 2 years as well. So recent results, but a lot of results as well to his name. Last saw him T9 at the Travelers after missing cuts at the U.S. Open in the Memorial prior. The putting for Glover is simultaneously not great, but probably not as bad as we think. He's like a 40, off the top of my head, like 43rd percentile putter from within 15 feet and like 13th percentile from beyond that. So better days ahead, but not necessarily going to light it up. But, he is a standout in terms of course fit. Second on the list is Denny McCarthy. Salary's $11,800 on FanDuel, 28 to 1 to win on FanDuel Sportsbook. 3 straight top 7s for McCarthy at this course. Had 2 missed cuts here before that streak. It was T12 in his last start at the Travelers, notably T8 at the PGA Championship. He has not missed a cut since the Open last year. He's playing some really good golf. His ceiling's a lot higher than you think. And as we're going to talk about soon with current form, you can be the best in this field recently, but it doesn't mean you're a super standout. But in terms of ceiling, he's actually second in ceiling over the last 50 rounds. It's a pretty clustered group. It's not as high as you get with the superstars, but it is noteworthy to me. Also good form here, JT Poston, 11,600 on FanDuel, 30-1 to win on FanDuel Sportsbook. He started his career at TPC Deere Run, T64, T65, and 2 missed cuts. Since then, he's got a win, a 6th, and a 30th the last 3 years. He's made the cut at all 3 majors this year, was T5 at the PGA Championship. So probably a popular name this week. I think it's for good reason. Sorry to note this one. Seamus Power has played well here, but the form is not great. 3 missed cuts in his last 5 starts. Perhaps this helps him get back on track, but 5 top 25 results in 6 career starts. Just the current form right now is not where you want it, even at a sort of value salary, 8,800 on FanDuel, or longer win odds around 90-1 on Sportsbook. But maybe that gets you there because there's not a ton to cling to in terms of the value tier, but that's where we are with Seamus right now. Mark Hubbard also on the list, 9,800 is the salary. 4 straight made cuts here, T6 in 2023. He's made 6 of his last 7 cuts and was T13 at the Rocket Classic last week. Kind of better than expected approach for him, which could be a good sign, maybe not. Could be time to cool back down for Hubbard in terms of his long-term splits. Davis Thompson, 11,200, won here last year, 35-1 to win this year. 2 career starts here, T31 prior in 2023, was T25 at the Travelers, T34 at Rocket Classic. Since missing the cut at the US Open, not going to talk anybody out of him, just not necessarily jumping off the page to me compared to some others. You were grimacing.
Do you have your putting splits up, or would that be a burden? Because I'm curious, because his putter's been dog do, and I'm like, is he just like hideous, or because I feel like he's hideous, but I wanted to at least check on that.
Davis Thompson, we're talking?
Yeah.
14th percentile on tour this year from within 15 feet, 31st percentile beyond that. So probably even getting luckier than he should. Yeah, it doesn't exactly work that way, but just as sort of it's not ideal. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple names in this field who kind of look solid, but maybe their putting splits are concerning. Ryan Gerard. Michael Torbjornsen's also on this list in just 2 starts, 17th and 2nd, which is noteworthy. 2 starts against 5 years is more noteworthy. It's just 4 years here, but again, still makes it on cumulative strokes gained. Salary's up. It was T4 at Rocket Classic, T2 at Corrales recently. Can kind of pop off in weaker fields. So interesting, really good driver. Salary's really high though at 11,100. I don't think I'm going to get there exactly, but a name that I want to watch for sure. And then 2 more names before we kind of drop off to sort of a lot of similar numbers. Alex Smalley, salary's 9,900, 50-1 to win on Sportsbook, 47th, 16th, 2nd. Missed the cut here last year though. Accurate driver, kind of solid across the board recently. We've talked a lot about Alex Smalley in the past, just kind of being interesting for being kind of good at a lot of stuff, but not great at anything. And then Kevin Yu, salary's 10,500. 40-1 to win on FanDuel Sportsbook, 6th and 20th in 2 starts at TPC Deere Run, 3rd at the RBC Canadian Open, T25 at the Travelers, and field leader in ball striking the last 50 rounds, according to Data Golf. Ball striking being your off the tee plus your approach strokes gain numbers. So I was kind of surprised to see the salary there. It kind of felt like one of those, salaries are just kind of out of sorts because they have to distribute the salary similarly. So you're going to get to these names that are kind of a little bit head scratchy at certain numbers. But Kevin Yu, 7th off the tee, 12th in approach the last 50 rounds. And the putter, though, I will say 61st percentile on longer putts, 16th percentile on shorter putts. So there's a lot of this whole week feels like, oh, here's the good and here's the bad. Yeah. And then you kind of have that with almost everyone. So it gets really hard to get excited about too many guys in particular. That's not to say that I don't love a couple names this week, but not everybody has the total package, which goes back to what you're saying is whenever you do see that, or whenever you do see kind of the quote unquote best golfers, I think that's got some appeal this week.
Well, and you said that you take the good with the bad, and here's the good, here's the bad. And the tough part for me is deciding which bad is too bad and which bad can we accept. For example, you mentioned Alex Smalley. He's on the list for good course history, $9,800 on FanDuel. I looked into Smalley both from a betting perspective, not an outright, but like a top 10, top 20, and from a DFS perspective. Then you look back and you see that his only event since the RBC Canadian Open was the Rocket Classic last week, and he got torched. Lost 1.95 off the tee, 1.51 around the green. Now, like, you can get to a situation where you realize you're not going to make the cut, and so you just kind of check out, which is fine. I understand that. Like, you gotta say what's in the tank. I get that. When you see an event like that in the logs, it's two rounds. You miss the cut. How concerning is that for someone you are looking at who like maybe does have a lot of that package, but has some blood on the ledger very recently?
What I like to do typically is effectively cross off names in red and just be like, you know what? Not this week.
Sure.
This week is more of a cross off names in yellow because I might have to circle back anyway, to fill out enough lineups. But yeah, I mean, you make a good case with Smalley, but realistically, there's like, and we're going to talk about this here in a second about how good is like good right now among this field. It's like really even sort of across the board. You take the good, you take the bad. For a lot of guys, it just is a wash and nobody really stands out. Aside from, I would probably say two names recently.
Yeah.
And I think that they're the two betting favorites for a reason.
Right. So let's talk about those two guys and dig into the current form section for today. Talk about the golfers, the best form entering the John Deere Classic. Who stands out to you when you look at the data of late?
So, okay. Jason Day moved again. So I just was double checking. So over the last 3 months, according to Data Golf, in terms of their true strokes gained leaderboard, so this adjusts for field strength, there are two names averaging at least 1.2 strokes per round on effectively the world average golfer. One being Ben Griffin, whose odds have shortened from 16 to 14 to 1. He is at a 1.78 in this span. That is 0.3 shots better per round than Jason Day, who's at a 1.48. He, I guess, briefly lengthened to 25 and is back to 22 on FanDuel Sportsbook. They're the two highest salaried golfers on FanDuel for a reason. 0.3 shots is like nothing to scoff at, and that's basically where Day is over everybody else in the field. So that puts a pretty big gap between Ben Griffin and the rest. With that being said, and we love Ben Griffin. He seems like a really cool guy and easy to root for. But 1.78 strokes gained per round, while impressive to this field, is not overly, like, he's 14 to 1. But Scotty in this span, no, not that anybody's mistaken those two. Scotty in this span's 3.57, Bryson 2.96. Jeez, this, you know what? I feel vindicated when I said about like, hey, there's no Scotty, there's no Rory, and I was like maybe Xander, but who else is there? John Rahm's at a 2.3, and then it's Ben Griffin at a 1.78. So
Hey.
So I got to contextualize this. Yes, that means Ben Griffin over the last 3 months, according to Data Golf, is the fourth best male golfer in the world. That's that's a lot lower than what you typically see over a streak. This is kind of it's kind of damning for the everyone not named Scotty, really. But how are you valuing Ben Griffin as the favorite? And do you think Jason Day is close? Do you think it's a big tier? Where are you with Griffin this week?
I like Griffin because we talked about wanting to go towards the best overall golfers. Stands out when you talked about the past 3 months. Stands out when I look at like relevant strokes gained. So shorter sample for ball striking, longer sample for short game. He is pretty easily the runaway favorite there, and he separates from Jason Day more in that department. And, that can be subject to like, hey, this guy had one bad event, like Day struggled driving at the PGA Championship. So it's like, that can weigh things down more than should. Day's irons at the RBC Heritage weren't good either. But like, hey, he's fine at the Travelers, so don't want to worry about that too much. But like, Griffin actually is a standout. I think that if you were talking about taking the good at the bad. If I'm talking about the good at the bad with Ben Griffin, the good is the profile. The bad is I'm worried about fatigue because he's playing a lot of golf, trying to rack up those FedEx Cup or Ryder Cup points. Let's be realistic, though. It's the Ryder Cup.
Yeah.
He's been playing a lot of golf. I know he had an off week here somewhat recently before the US Open, but it's a lot of golf. To me, the downsides with him are less concerning than they are with most other guys. So personally, I think that he is a deserving favorite. I think that 14-1 is not that bad of a price. We'll talk about that later on too. But I'm willing to buy into him as saying, hey, he's the best guy in this field. Figure it out from there. What about you?
From what perspective? Betting or DFS?
Both.
For betting, I think 14-1 is a little short.
Mm-hmm.
I think 16, which is where he kind of was close to fair.
Mm-hmm.
But I see a little bit of added value on that second tier as a result. Again, Ben Griffin, great golfer, generally high-ish overall ceiling, but not so much of a standout that I would kind of just go out of my way to assume that he is rightfully the favorite at any particular odds. So 16 was already about pushing it. 14, I can't quite get there, even though I do agree that he is the best golfer in the field currently, long-term, short-term, whatever it is.
Okay. So that's where we're standing at Ben Griffin. You mentioned Jason Day. Any thoughts on him?
I like Jason Day. He has the highest statistical ceiling on a per round basis among this field over the last 50 rounds. What's kind of hard to conceptualize is that he's pretty good still tee to green, 16th over the last 50 rounds. 39th though in ball striking. The driver's not ideal. He's not super accurate. The irons are 37th in that span. And while he's 29th in strokes gained putting over the last 50 rounds, his splits from within 15 feet this year are actually 15th percentile, which is the absolute inverse of what you'd think for Jason Day.
Right.
And typically that's like, okay, why don't you just dislike him? Well, in this case, there's enough with the tee to green game that is still appealing, and he is able to put together high ceilings despite not putting particularly well. And I'm okay in this instance, which is why I just don't blindly trust exactly what the numbers say and ignore everything else. I don't think that Jason Day is a bad long-term putter. I think that it's probably something else happening and that better days are ahead. So with that said, he's rating out well enough in my model. Maybe he's being overvalued because he's just making too many putts. But honestly, if you asked me straight up, Jason Day versus some of these other names on Sunday, I'm like, I think that Jason Day's been close enough to some big events recently that I would want to have Jason Day in a head-to-head against, I won't say Ben Griffin.
Okay. That's what I was going to ask. Okay.
But anybody else.
Uh-huh.
And that at a certain point has to matter to me.
I would go with Jason Day over everyone other than Ben Griffin as well. So
Okay.
We are in lockstep there. I think, frankly, it'd be a decent, I think that they're tiered out correctly, where Day's a tier above Denny McCarthy, Michael Thorbjornsen, JT Poston. I think that's accurate. So I think we're pretty much aligned here. I'm higher on Ben Griffin than you, but we're pretty similar on Jason Day is the way that I would view things there. Okay. Beyond Griffin and Day, who else is entering with good form?
So here's where things get a little awkward because the third ranked golfer over the last 3 months in terms of true strokes gained average is in Jackson Koiven, who you were quick on that.
I had to pull it up.
Okay.
Well, I was going to ask you about your thoughts on
So yeah, as Jim has pulled up here, some good results for the 20-year-old on, as a pro. 56th at the Farmers, 48th at the Arnold Palmer, 67th at the U.S. Open. Very successful amateur career, collegiate numbers. Like, it's hard to contextualize, and data golf helps with that. They say that over the last 3 months, he is the third best golfer in this field, which is pretty disgusting to think about. I'm not trusting the actual shot length numbers because it's a very small sample. But with that in mind, a salary of $8,000 on FanDuel, pretty long win odds, 110 last I looked. I'm not saying he's a pick to win, but with that said, oh my gosh, he's 110 to win, and Max Homa is 100 to 1. Like,
Max.
That's sad. But I think that at a salary of $8,000 in a field where when we talk about the value golfers, it's going to be a lot of shrugs. He's jumping out to me. So I think you're already there as well by the looks of it.
Yeah, and I might have bet him at 150 to 1 as well. Like, I don't know, man. Like, there's not a lot in this field. So do I feel amazing about that? No. Have I been suckered into like young dudes who can pop before and been really stupid? Yeah, totally. But again, the competition here is not amazing. If you look at his amateur data and include that in the equation, he's really freaking good relative to this field. And personally, I have more faith in data golf weighing that stuff properly than I do myself. And if they say, hey, Jackson Quaven has been really good the past 3 months, if you look at the past 6 months, he's at plus 0.37 true strokes gained in the time, again, including his amateur data as well. You know, that's going to put him around, like, he should be 110-ish to 1 to win or so. So it's not like he's some crazy value, but it does get better the smaller sample you look at and stuff like that. So I do like Quaven. We'll be there in DFS. Did bet him, not necessarily recommending that you bet him, but do as I say, not as I do kind of thing. Tends to happen pretty often with me.
He did miss the cut at the U.S. Open, so
yeah. Did I say he didn't?
Well, the position looks wrong.
Oh yeah, because they have the position on there. Yeah.
But overall, I think that there's enough to like about him that we just kind of trust it, because he's got a 2-round shot length sample, and I said I'm not doing it, but like the irons were good over those 2 rounds. Yeah. So like, I'll take that.
Yeah. Okay. Beyond Quaven, who else stands out?
So if I'm just going to jump down to the guys below 10,000. Quaven, of course, leads, but Sammy Valamaki's next. 8,500 is the salary. He's at a 1.08. T19 at the Rocket Classic. T12 in his only start at TPC Deere Run. Talked about him briefly toward the end of the show last week. I didn't exactly love it, but I was fine with the concept there. Kind of similar this week, especially in a week where we're kind of value starved. Mark Hubbard, salary's 9,800. T13 at the Rocket Classic. Pretty good across the board stats and recent starts. We know he's an accurate driver. Long history at TPC Deere Run. 4 straight made cuts. 2 top 15s the last 2 years. He's at a 1.2. And that's basically the list below, or above a 1, sorry. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 names better than a 1 over the last 3 months. That's bleak.
Yeah.
It's not great. But he does fit the bill under 10,000. Then we jump down to Ryan Gerard. 9,900 is the salary. He's down at a 0.87. Terrible putting. Already talked about that. Still think there's reasons that you can be fine with it, but just want to note that it's a little hard to trust such bad putting. But Keith Mitchell, 9,800. He's also at a 0.87. Irons are still a plus. Kind of cooling off a little bit with the finishing positions, but don't want to lose sight of that. I would go Mitchell over Gerard probably without digging in too much further. If Jim's going to offer me a head-to-head, just basically side with Jim because he always beats me on the head-to-heads. For a man who hates the word floor, you're very good with the head-to-heads.
I know. I like Keith Mitchell enough where I'm not doing that.
Yeah. And then I'm just going to rattle off these names because nobody really stands out. These are the other names above a 0.5 over the last 3 months. Andrew Putnam, 0.76, salary's 9,500. Eric Cole, 0.75, 8,900. Vince Whaley, 9,300. Emiliano Grillo, 9,200. I don't mind Grillo by any means this week. Ryo Hisatsune, kind of like the new Jason Kokrak, just always like 9,100 every week. He's at a 0.68. Ricky Fowler, 0.64. Salary's up at 9,700. And then Matt McCarty, though, 8,700. Probably hear his name again before the end of the show. 0.59. So again, pretty flat, pretty uninspiring. That's what we're dealing with this week. Anybody jump out? You want to talk about more?
I think the main thing is like there aren't a lot of DFS plays I love this week. Like my love section is currently 5 golfers, and that like my love/like section is 5 golfers. So not a lot of dudes I like. If I'm going to like scrounge for value plays, I'm probably going to put faith in like who is in the best form right now. And that is the guys at the top of this list: Jackson Koivin, Semi Valimaki, Koivin, $8,000, Valimaki, $8,500. That gives you a lot of flexibility to get back up. If I want to go Ben Griffin or if you want to go Jason Day as your top DFS play, you can get a lot of flexibility by using guys like that. So I'm going to put faith in those kinds of guys for this week. Weather for TPC Deere Run is interesting because the worst wind will come Friday afternoon at 12 miles per hour, but that's not that much higher than it'll be Thursday afternoon. So elevated winds overall, that may help keep scoring a bit in check relative to what it's been. Like maybe we don't get a 28 under this week, I hope. But I don't think we need to care too much about tee times for this week. It should be pretty even between the opening and later waves on Thursday. A lot of wind Saturday, though. And then it could rain on Sunday as well. So could see some rain, we'll see some wind over the weekend too. Again, hopefully keeping scoring in check. But overall, from a tee time perspective, I don't think we need to worry too much about that. With that said, let's dive in now to the betting odds over at FanDuel Sportsbook and try to identify our favorite bets at FanDuel for this week. Brandon, let's begin things with the outrights. And you take a look at the win odds at FanDuel Sportsbook. Which golfers stand out to you as being the best values?
Okay, now I got to refresh again. Is Jason Day back to 25?
He is, and Ben Griffin lengthened too. All right.
Okay.
That makes me feel a lot better because I was going to say like 4. I can't get shorter than 14, but 16, okay.
Okay, but Denny McCarthy shortened.
Okay.
Well,
so yeah, McCarthy was 28. He's 25. Jason Day lengthened. He went from 25 to 22 back to 25. Ben Griffin went from 16 to 14 back to 16. So we're kind of back where we started, except with McCarthy shortening.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm still good with this. Win one, lose one here. But I'm going with both of those names at 25 now. Jason Day. I like Jason Day to win the John Deere Classic for a couple of reasons. Over the last 50 rounds of pro golf action, nobody in this field has a higher statistical ceiling than Jason Day in terms of gaining strokes. So it's your baseline plus your standard deviations, all that kind of stuff. Day is the man from that capacity for this week. Now, I already talked about this, and I don't love the putting splits. From within 15 feet, really poor season from Jason Day. 15th percentile putter from within 15 feet on tour this season. Still good on those longer putts, 73rd percentile. And I'm in this specific instance, I'm okay. Just assuming that that's going to correct. I could be off base. Maybe I learned my lesson this week. But the strokes gained putting numbers are still good for Day long-term this season, despite not really being dialed in from in close. He's also top 30 in strokes gained per shot from 50 yards to 150 yards, according to Data Golf over the last 12 months, which is a key range for me this week. Played here 6 times in his career, just once since 2011, though, but that was T23 last year. Love the high ceiling. He's got some good finishes in really strong events. T8 at the Arnold Palmer this year, T8 at the Masters, T23 at the US Open, T4 at the Travelers. And again, I love Ben Griffin. I can see that he's the best golfer in the field right now. that number just isn't good enough for me when I can get Jason Day at 25-1, who I think can go out and maybe shut the door on some of these guys again, get a big win for himself this year.
Yeah, and like I said before, I do think that it is tier 1 Ben Griffin, tier 2 Jason Day, tier 3 everyone else. I agree that Jason Day does kind of separate from the field. So I'm on board with you with Jason Day, liking him. I agree with you, your thoughts on the putting, where it's like, yeah, he's been bad inside 15 feet, but like long term, we know what Jason Day is, and putting is kind of a longer term sort of stat. So I think that being in on Jason Day makes a lot of sense. So you got Jason Day 25-1. Who else do you like this week?
Yeah, I like Danny McCarthy too, 25-1. Unfortunate, it's not 28 right now, but maybe things kind of keep wiggling around a little bit. Who knows? But lots to like about Danny McCarthy. Second only to Jason Day in terms of his round by round ceiling over the last 50 rounds. I'd be surprised if he doesn't continue success at TPC Deere Run long term for him. Sixth, and seventh over the last 3 years. It's an accuracy friendly setup for McCarthy, and he tends to putt the lights out at TPC Deere Run. 92nd percentile putter from within 15 feet on tour this season. He's the best putter by strokes gained over the last 50 rounds among this field. Top 20 iron player in that span as well. Strangely, I have to do less convincing of myself on Danny McCarthy than on Jason Day. But in terms of true ceiling, I think that Jason Day, and just mathematically, it's a little bit higher for Day, but not by much. So, same odds. I still would go Day over McCarthy, but this is a why not both situation. I think these are good numbers. In a field without runaway favorites, I think that these are two guys who would not surprise me if they're in contention on Sunday.
Yeah, I think that liking Danny McCarthy makes a lot of sense. I like the course history. I like the course fit. I can't quite get to 25-1 because if I look at their numbers the past 3 months, the numbers the past 6 months, the relevant strokes gain data that I look at, Griffin and Day stand pretty far above him in both those. So I think I understand your mentality of Porque no los dos and taking Day and McCarthy. Personally, I'd rather go Griffin and neither than getting McCarthy in there, just because not quite as high in Denny. Like, yeah, he is going to look better at like the last 6 months and last 3 months data will include a lot of courses that are not going to suit him very well. So that's important context to keep in mind, but still not quite enough to bridge that gap. But I understand why you're there because Danny McCarthy is a genuinely good golfer, and that's what we want for this week.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be open to if you're not sold on McCarthy, there's another name you're going to talk about that I was very close on.
That makes me feel good because I was a little uneasy about that one. But you're in on Jason Day at 25-1 and Danny McCarthy at 25-1 as well. We'll talk about the golfer I do not feel uneasy about. I feel actually pretty good about this. Let's begin by talking about why I think Ben Griffin is a value for this week at 16-1. We talked before about how we're taking the good with the bad with golfers in the field this week. And the only bad I can find with Ben Griffin is the fact he's been playing so much golf. And at some point, he's going to get worn down and probably slow down. But it hasn't really happened yet. If you look at, again, relevant strokes gained, his past 30 rounds off the tee, 40 rounds approach, 50 rounds with his around the green and putting to account for when those numbers tend to stabilize. He is first in the field in relevant strokes gained at 1.74. Nobody else is above 1.27. And Griffin does that by gaining in all four categories and gaining like a non-negligible amount as well. If you look at the past 6 events for Ben Griffin, he has lost strokes for an event across only one category. And that was around the green at the Travelers. Every other time he has been in the green for every strokes gain category in every single event for his past 6. He also did finish 5th here last year. That's before Ben Griffin really popped on the PGA Tour. And now when you add in his form, I think it's standing relative to the field with how well each guy is playing. I think there's enough there to make Ben Griffin a quality bet at 16-1 at FanDuel Sportsbook for this week. I think that 14 is as short as I can go. I still would have talked about 14-1, but I wouldn't have felt as good about it. But now that he's back to 16, to me, that's enough to make me feel good about Ben Griffin for this week. So any thoughts for you? I guess we've kind of gotten your thoughts already on Ben Griffin at 16-1.
No real issues with it. Just prefer getting both of Day and McCarthy to Griffin, but I can see it again that he is the best golfer in the field right now.
Okay. You said there was another guy I liked who you'd be willing to consider. Let's talk about that guy now, because that guy is lengthened. Nope, still 40. That is Bud Cauley. I felt a little weird about this because I've been higher on Cauley than you have for a while now, and he hasn't really rewarded me for that faith. So I was a little bit worried going back to him this week, but I'm encouraged to hear that you are okay with Cauley as well. I also would want Cauley to go for a top 10 as well, because, 40-1 would be a little heartbreaking if he were to not win. So I think I want to go the top 10 here as well. The reason I like Cauley is he's still having spike weeks with the irons. He gained 1.23 in approach at the Travelers, which was a tough field. He lost 0.61 putting there, but he's had good weeks with the putter as well. He is a guy who can be accurate off the tee. And I mentioned before that Ben Griffin leads in relevant strokes gained, looking at that number by a good margin. Bud Cauley is actually number 2 in that one. So over the longer term, the short game has still been good. Ball striking has been solid recently. He's had some success at this course before he had the injuries. So I think Bud Cauley makes a lot of sense at 40-1. What puts you on Bud Cauley for this week, and what market specifically are you going towards him in?
Personally, I'm there for an outright, but I understand if people want to keep their outrights a little bit more limited, understand that. Otherwise, to finish top 10 at plus 400, Bud Cauley is kind of the inverse Jason Day right now. Great putter from within 15 feet on tour this season. 91st percentile, 19th percentile on longer putts. So the math kind of suggests that he's going to make some longer putts here soon, get some better strokes gained numbers with the putter. T61 here last year, which is his first start since 2019 at the course, but 3 straight top 20s prior to that. And third best iron player over the last 50 rounds. And I keep talking about like the ceiling rating, your high end variance, despite being a pretty much a long shot, just kind of thrown in with the rest of the field, 4th in high end variance over the last 50 rounds. So for me, you get that high end variance with some putting regression probably coming his way. I like Bud Cauley 40-1 to win, but I'm also okay if I really want to keep things more limited, top 10 plus 400, because I do think that even though historically we get a multi-shot winner, it's probably going to be fairly clustered. You're going to get a lot of names that can go out and win, need a break to go your way. But Bud Cauley, there's a lot to like for this week.
Okay. I feel better about him now than I did before. So thank you for that. So I've got Bud Cauley 40-1 to win, and going with Ben Griffin 16-1. You've got Bud Cauley 4-1 for a top 10. Which other non-outrights are you eyeing for this week?
Not Denny McCarthy, but Matt McCarty to finish top 20 at plus 300. Hasn't played here before, but good chance to go low. Good chance to be a good course fit long-term. 19th in driving accuracy over the last 50 rounds, 11th in putting in that span. Really good distance splits. Also a 91st percentile putter from within 15 feet on tour this season. Long-term iron play is kind of trending up as well. So top 20 finisher, plus 300. I'm there. Probably not going to get there for an outright at 75-1, but again, it's partial unit if you're interested. I think he's got the upside to do it. But McCarty is a name that I want some exposure to this week. And I will just say, and it's kind of unfair, but eventually, like, Tom Kim is going to find things. This is not the strangest week for him to do it. I couldn't quite get there, but at least wanted to mention that his name is kind of sitting there in this same tier of, like, no offense to anybody, but there's no real name value here. And Tom Kim's like, it would make sense that he plays well at a course like this.
Yeah. Tom Kim 3-1 for a top 20 is what you were alluding to, in the same range as McCarty, but also Rico Hoey, Christian Bezuidenhout. Eventually it'll click for Tom Kim, and hasn't happened yet. Looking at even at the more recent events, still not there. Obviously the US Open for him was fine, but rest of it's not quite there. I did the same thing with Sung J M personally, where I looked in okay, good name value. I know long-term this guy's a really good golfer, better than a lot of guys in this field. Irons for Sung Jae somehow getting worse, so I couldn't quite get there myself. But I did the same exercise you did with Tom Kim.
I hear that.
Okay, so you've got Matt McCarty top 20 at 3-1, in addition to Bud Cauley top 10 at 4-1. I initially had Brian Gerard for a top 10 at plus 450. Luckily, the betting odds moving gives me an out. He shortened to 4-1, and I'm like, okay, I don't need to go there, because I do kind of agree with you that it's like, would I rather go with Ryan Gerard at 4-1 for a top 10, or would I rather go for a guy we actually talked about in Keith Mitchell, who is 5-1? That's a big difference. If you're looking at if you model stuff out, the difference between 4-1 to 5-1 is different. And I'm like, okay, I'm not taking a Keith Mitchell head to head because I think that he's somewhat on par with Ryan Gerard. That should tell you all you need to know. Now, it's worth mentioning Mitchell did play at the Rocket Classic last week, and he was terrible off the tee, terrible around the green, terrible putting, but the approach play was still there. So I don't think it's necessarily an injury. That's always my concern when there's a really bad event of data in there. He's did still gain a bunch with approach. So I'm willing to overlook that and kind of trust the longer sample with Keith Mitchell. And the longer sample is still pretty good. The past 6 months, 0.42 strokes gained off the tee per round. 0.47. He's at 0.43 on approach in that time, negative 0.02 on the greens. So losing a bit there. But overall, when you give that kind of ball striking to a guy who in that span has been neutral with his short game, the around the green play has regressed for sure with Keith Mitchell. And I think that's probably sticky. He's not someone who, when he was golfing well earlier this year, it's like, okay, will this stick? The regression did hit in the form of the wedges. But I think that at 5-1 for a top 10 in this specific field with how good his ball striking is, I'm okay with that. So I'll take Keith Mitchell for a top 10 at 5-1 for this week as my first non-outright. I was going to keep talking, but I realized I should just...
He's fourth in birdie or better rate on tour this season.
Okay.
The only guys better than him right now, Justin Thomas, Scotty Scheffler, Sepp Straka.
Oh, you meant fourth overall, not in this field. That's crazy. Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet. I love that. Okay. So yeah, Keith Mitchell, top 10, 5-1, like that more than Ryan Gerard at 4-1. Other non-outright, I could never do it outright here, but Lee Hodges is now, I guess, plus 260 for a top 20. So he's shortened a bit. That's getting thin, but still don't hate it at that number of plus 260. He had a stretch of bad missed cuts back in the spring. Not bad, but a bad stretch where he missed a lot of cuts, but he's bounced back recently. He's now made 30 straight cuts with good ball striking, also putted well at the Canadian Open. Even in the events where he missed a cut, the irons were still good. And that's a skill that I think I'm willing to buy into. So Lee Hodges top 20 plus 260. I think that makes sense too. So I'll go with Lee Hodges top 20 at plus 260 and Keith Mitchell for a top 10 at 5-1. Any thoughts for you on Lee Hodges this week, Brandon?
He's a DFS target for me for sure at a salary of 9,000 even. Top 25 in both strokes gain approach over the last 50 and short range putting on tour this season. So that's a good combo for this week.
I will happily take that for top 10 at plus 260. All right, let's transition now to talk some DFS. This has been the tougher section of the show for me, at least for this week, because there frankly aren't a lot of guys that I like. The top end is fine. And I think that's kind of the saving grace here, Brandon, is that there are a handful of guys up top who I like. I like Ben Griffin at 12.2. I like Jason Day at 12,000. Denny McCarthy at 11.8. And frankly, I think I can get to both those guys, or two of those three guys, in a lineup for this week with the presence of Jackson Coyvin, Sandy Valimaki, some of the guys in the mid to low 8,000 range, because those guys aren't that much worse, if they're worse at all, than the guys in the upper 8K range or the lower 9 range. So to me, Brandon, the approach this week is get two of Griffin, Day, or McCarthy. What about for you?
Yeah, I'm very similar. This feels like the type of week where it's easy to bump down from those guys to get a more, not to have a name that you're not in love with at the lower end, but I think it's so flat at the low end that it's hard to sort of gloss over. I really like Ben Griffin for DFS. Just process is there. Again, I think 16-1 is a better number than 14 for sure, which sounds obvious, but I think that's kind of where my breaking point was around 15.5, 16. With Griffin. So he's my priority from a DFS standpoint. And then it's kind of a coin flip between Day and McCarthy. I might prefer McCarthy for head-to-heads and Day for tournaments from that perspective. But I'm very interested in getting two of those three. You get 9,000 left if you do Griffin and McCarthy together.
Yeah,
for four golfers. If it's Day, it's going to be just obviously slightly less at 89.50, but that mid tier ain't doing enough to make me scared. What's
So
up?
you mentioned that you like McCarthy more for cash games and Day more for tournaments. What's the selling point for you there? Is it the how stable McCarthy is combined
Yes.
with the course
He has
history?
not
Okay.
missed the cut since the Open. I'll double check that. But
It's a bizarre stat. I like
yeah,
my mouth dropped when you said that.
I mean, it's a lot of consistency.
Yeah.
Again, Day, who would I be more surprised misses the cut? I'd be more surprised
That's a
that Danny
great way
McCarthy
to phrase
misses
it.
the cut. Who would I be
Yeah.
more surprised goes out and wins? I'd be more surprised if McCarthy won than Day. So
Who do we expect to withdraw? We know the answer there too. You know,
that's
like
also, yeah.
I guess that's a fair point. You know what? You may have talked me into McCarthy in cash games, Day in tournaments. Frankly, not a lot else. Like I'm okay. I like Siwoo Kim enough, but I'm not getting there at 11-7. I don't mind JT posting 11-6. Can't get to Sung Jae as we discussed. Luke Clanton, no. Davis Thompson, my guy. Good to meet here last year. Honestly, I think that there's a fall off after Day and McCarthy. Anyone here stand out to you in the rest of the 11,000 range?
I'd go Poston over the rest, but
Mm-hmm.
I see the case for Siwoo Kim. I see the case for Sung Jae M, but not specifically going out of my way here.
Yeah.
I think there's too much of a drop off from those top three this week.
Okay, I agree with that as well. Let's go down to the 10K range then. Beginning with Chris Kirk, obviously a little bit of heartbreak for him this past week, but still played very good golf once again. He's at 10-9. What are you looking at in the 10,000 range this week?
I think three names I'm mostly going to prioritize in the 10K range with Kevin Yu. Talked about how good his ball striking has been. Field leader over the last 50 rounds. Salary's $10,500. Of course, Bud Colley at 10-2, and then I'm willing to roll the dice on Lucas Glover at 10,000, despite the putting being what it is. Should probably be a little bit better, and is basically a course stud. A lot of history here. Just seems like a good setup. So, again, towards the lower end of the 10K range, that's where I am.
I like you enough. I prefer Bud Colley putting in Ben Griffin and Jason Day because I want to see what it looked like if I did Griffin plus Day plus Bud Colley. 85-33 left. Frankly, I'm cool with that because I'm going to go probably with Koivu plus Valimaki. And that's going to leave me with enough on the table to feel like an okay lineup, feel okay with my lineup. So I can do all three of Griffin, Day, Colley, and I will do that, I would think, pretty often. But if I had to jump down 200 to Lucas Glover, I'll do that. I know it's sometimes a bit like Lucas Glover in DFS, but like, you know, it works sometimes. So I would go with Colley 1, Glover 2, you 3. I probably won't get there, but like hey, I've got 10-5 left on the table for whatever reason. I've already got Bud Colley in there. Sure, Kevin Yu works. So ranking number 3 in that range, just probably not going to get there despite that. 9K range. What stands out to you here?
Not a lot.
I have 0 golfers on my list between 99 and 9,000.
I wouldn't like if I needed to bump down to Keith Mitchell, that'd be fine.
Sure.
But other than that, Kevin Roy's slightly interesting. Jacob Bridman's slightly interesting. I think Emiliano Grillo at 92 is the first name that I would go out of my way to click.
Don't mind Grillo at all. Yeah.
And that's probably it until I get to, I'm assuming we're both thinking of Lee Hodges at 9,000.
Yeah. You highlighted the guys I would have highlighted. Like, I think Smalley at 99, like, I'd rather find 100 to get up to Glover, but like, you know, I can't make it work for whatever reason. Fine. I'll take Alex Smalley. That works.
Smalley or Mitchell?
Good question, actually. I would probably, well, they both bombed last week, so that's not an angle I can take. Better ball striking from Mitchell. Honestly, I don't know. I'd probably go Keith Mitchell, but it's close.
Yeah, I'd go Mitchell.
Okay. Not seeing much in the mid 5,000 or 9,000 range. I am okay with Grillo at 92. You'd mentioned to me on Slack before the US Open, hey, Grillo striping the irons. He was like somewhere in like the low 7K range, and he actually played pretty good golf that entire week, finished 19th there. So Grillo at 92 makes sense, but I think that Hodge is the first guy I'm like, yep, good with that at 9,000 for this week.
Yep, I agree with that.
Okay. Value plays. As we get to Hodges and lower at $9,000, what stands out to you there?
Stands out as a little tricky.
Who are you willing to tolerate?
Realistically, Matt McCarty
Mm-hmm.
at 87.
Yeah.
For reasons I already discussed. Is that a new headshot for Doug Gim with the bucket hat? I don't think I've seen that before.
Did I scroll past him? Where is he?
86.
Oh, yeah. Is that his hair or is that a bucket? That's a bucket hat. You're right. Good for him.
And it's honestly like Valimaki at 85 in between that.
Yeah. Like there are guys I like dug into. Like I dug into Sam Ryder a bit. Couldn't quite sell myself there. I like Valimaki, so that one wasn't too hard to get to. Austin Eckroth's ball striking is good, but like the rest has been concerning, is what I would say. So I think it's Valimaki at 85. I keep trying with Henrik Norlander. He's 83 this week. The irons are still good. The rest is still bad. And then Jackson Koiven at $8,000. So it's Koiven and Valimaki as the guys I'm like good with. Everything else is kind of like, yeah, I guess I could see it maybe. Like that's the best I can do.
Yeah, Norlander and Max McGreevy basically great ball strikers, really weak short games. Norlander though better ball striker and less bad kind of short game, so he would win out there over McGreevy at 86, but kind of okay with McGreevy if I need to be. I just don't want to tie my lineups to too many names that I don't like.
Yeah.
And I don't need to go super deep.
Yeah.
I don't need to jam in a third like superstar if I don't want to.
Yeah.
So.
I think that what I would say about this week after having talked about it is this is a good single entry week. Not like isn't like, oh, limit yourself to one lineup kind of week, like do what you want, but like it's a good week where I want to have the tightest core I can possibly have because there aren't a lot of guys I want to use. So why not just use the 6 or 7 or 8 guys that I actually do want to use? And that to me is Ben Griffin, either Jason Day or Denny McCarthy, Bud Colley, Lee Hodges, Semi Valimaki, Jackson Koiven. I kind of want to just keep it tight like that personally, because there's just not a whole lot else that truly inspires me here. What about for you? Who are your loves? And is that an okay approach in your eyes?
Are we going to have a 6v6?
I hope not, because I've not tried to make the puzzle pieces fit yet. But I need to make up ground, so I really can't afford to have a 6v6.
I think we could. So I now need to guess.
Let's just
I need to do guesswork.
Dang it. Yeah, probably. Yeah, we're gonna.
I'll have to do some guesswork on the one variable. Well, there's one variable still. Oh,
not really.
Kinda.
I don't think so.
So you're that much higher on McCarthy?
I think you talked me into it. Yes.
Okay. So, all right.
Like, will I be up early enough? What time is lock on Thursday? To make sure Jason Day didn't withdraw. I got
7 a.m.
Eastern.
That
is actually my wake up time. So I'll have to like set my alarm for a different time. Terrible. Okay. I'm probably going Denny McCarthy then. I don't want to do that. So who are your loves this week?
Ben Griffin, Danny McCarthy, Jason Day, Bud Colley. I'll say Emiliano Grillo.
Okay.
But Lee Hodges, very close. And I'm not going to go so far as to say Valimaki and Koiven are loves. They're strong likes based on salary.
Coward. Okay. Let's finish up with our win picks for this week. I won the bobble hats for the Travelers. Could not get the Russell Henley outright, which was very upsetting. Also, everything that happened to Tommy Fleetwood that week, very upsetting. So I'm glad I was not here last week to talk about that. So it means I got to go first and fourth or second and third. You kind of predicted this before the show, but because I get to pick if I want to go first and fourth, we have an overlap with guys that we like. Actually, no, we don't, because you didn't take Bud Colley. So I'm going to go first. I'm going to take Ben Griffin at 16-1. If you like both Jason Day and McCarthy, then I'll kind of allow you to take him. If you want to take Collie too, you can, because I tried to play game theory with it, but I'm going to take Ben Griffin 16-1 as my first pick.
Okay. There's no way to know that was incorrect, but I think that was the wrong play.
Because you are going to take Collie because you need to make it more ground?
Well, I'll just take Bud Collie.
Okay.
And I'm going to stick with Jason Day.
Okay.
But it's very close.
So basically, you're challenging me to take McCarthy at 25 with my last pick.
Yeah.
But do I actually want to do that? Is the question?
I don't know what you want to do.
I don't know.
I assumed you were taking Bud.
Yeah. In retrospect, I probably should have, but like also, I probably should have taken Bud. I'll take McCarthy. Why not? It'd be really sick if Denny McCarthy wins and you lose.
Yeah.
You wind up losing because of it. But
yeah, I mean, it is what it is. That feels about right for this year. But I just need to close the door on the DFS head-to-head first.
Yeah, you're pretty close. So that should happen pretty fast. And like, as long as you have a pulse, you'll be fine for the Tour Championship. You can find guys with long odds to win there. So like, yeah, Scotty will probably close the door or whatever, but like, you'll have a pulse there. So I've got Ben Griffin 16, Denny McCarthy 25. You have Jason Day 25 and Bud Collie 40 as the win picks for this week. Any final thoughts for you on the John Deere Classic, Brandon?
We're so similar with how we're looking at this.
A little scary.
And anybody listening might just be like, these guys are dummies, which is, is understandable. It's like, this is Siwoo Kim week, or why are we not going with JT Poston or whatever? Michael Torbjornson's playing great. Like I hear that, but I just think process wise and everything I'm looking at points me just those top three so much that I don't want to overcomplicate it and cross them off for no reason. So I could see this being the case that even though you and I are very, very similar, that everyone else is seeing it completely differently.
I think that there are a lot of defenses for seeing it very differently. We just happen to have a very similar process. We look at the same data. So we're down the same path, but it's an open week for sure. And you can trust your gut in a lot of things. If you want to go Jackson Coivin to win 150-1, you can do so. If you want to plug him in your DFS lineups at $8,000, you can do so. It is that kind of week for sure. That is all that we have here for today on the Heat Check. Back with you once again next week, though, same time, same place. The FanDuel Research Podcast feed on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Subscribe there, but also subscribe to the FanDuel Golf Betting YouTube page. Leave us a thumbs up there. We appreciate those of you watching on YouTube as always. Brandon, if people have questions for you on social media, where can they find you there?
I'm on X at Gdula13, GDULA13, and on Blue Sky at Gdula.
I am on X and Blue Sky at JimSannes. You can find FanDuel Research on X at FanDuel Research. Big thank you to our YouTube producer, Justin Lane, for his work in the video side of things. Thank you, Justin, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck to you with your bets and your DFS plays for the John Deere Classic. We'll talk to you once again next week. This has been the Heat Check, a FanDuel Research podcast.